Rough City podcast with Keith and Chaz, episode 3. And today we're going to be spending most of the episode sharing the musical mind of Nate Vannarucci, who's joining us. What up, Nate?
Yo, how's it going?
Thanks for being here. And of course, Keith is here. What up, Keith?
What's up, guys?
Actually, Nate is a old, longtime friend and bandmate of me and Keith. And I've actually known this guy since he was a little kid. And I have a couple funny memories of you when you were a little kid. Because I hung out with his older brother, John. And so Nate would be this little kid running around the house, little metalhead, you know, because he was lucky enough to have a big brother that knew all the badass bands. So he grew up knowing the right shit. And I remember one time taking you to, we would go to a drum circle that happened in, what was it, Golden Gate Park? And we would all grab pieces of our friend's drum set and just go to the drum circle where it would just be a bunch of San Francisco hippies smoking weed. And we would always, you know, do the right thing. And we would keep the pot away from the little brother. We would try to hide it. But I remember he was like downhill. And I was looking right at him. We're outside. And somebody just exhaled. And there was this giant plume of smoke that went right in your 8-year-old face. Oh, I just thought that was hilarious. And then another memory I had was I think you were 8 years old, and we're in the house, and you caught me. I was about to walk upstairs. You're like, "Hey, Chaz, come check out this riff." And this guitar was like bigger than your whole body, and your little head was sticking out of it. And I was like, "All right," thinking, "Go ahead, kid, knock yourself out." And you started to play, and I don't remember the riff, of course, but I was just like, "Dude," and I immediately said, and you're 8 years old, I was like, "Dude, you're going to blow us all away one day." And then I said something else. Do you remember what I said, Nate?
I do not remember the other thing you said, but I do know that you guys were smoking pot on the hillside of Golden Gate Park.
So we didn't do a good job hiding it from you. We probably did at first, then got stoned and lazy and forgot.
Right.
But what I said was, you're going to shred us all one day, but always stay modest no matter how good you get.
Yeah, you guys made fun of me enough to stay modest.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to see just how good you got.
Yeah, it didn't go that well.
All right. Well, look, Nate's band, we're going to talk about Nate's band for a while, Ontogeny. We are all members. I am an ex-member of the band. We've all been in a couple of bands together. Ontogeny has always been Nate's baby. He's the lead guitarist, songwriter. He brings everything to everyone else, and then it comes to life. But so yeah, tell us about the origin of Ontogeny.
Well, I guess the origin is just me playing guitar with my brother John in his basement and learning death metal riffs and starting to just want to make a band out of it. My brother John actually made the name Ontogeny before we even had songs, I think. So we kind of just went with that and started playing music together and writing death metal riffs. Was just wearing our influences on our sleeves, like Cannibal Corpse stuff and Meshuggah stuff, and really old school death metal stuff was inspiring to me. So that's kind of where it started, and then I guess it progressed to just me. John quit playing guitar, so I started just making riffs myself, and then I wrote the Pillars of Perversion album.
And how old were you when you wrote and recorded Pillars of Perversion?
Well, I mean, some of those riffs I wrote when I was like 14 years old. Some songs like congregating coffins. That's a hard fucking thing to say when you have a cotton mouth like a motherfucker. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, that thing was like the oldest song I think that we have. I wrote that when I was 14 years old, and so recording the album, I think I started recording it when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I finished it when I was 17.
Sick.
Took a while. It was me learning how to record my own music as well, and trying to dial in things I've never used before and try to make something sound good with no training and stuff. So it was very much a learning experience for me.
Well, can I just comment real quick? When first time I heard that album, it was my birthday at Micah's in Carmel Valley. And you were there, and I was shit-faced drunk. I think his name was Josh, right? He bought me a bottle of Kettle One for my birthday, and we were all tanked. And then you threw in, you're like, hey, we had just come out with our band's album, which was a pain to release, and it was just elated. I was elated that it even happened. And then you threw in Pillars. No warning. I had no taste or any demos of this because you were just still kind of the new recruit, little brother, the rookie in the team. Because I was a young, shitty person, and not that I was that bad. The hazing was all in good fun, but you threw in Pillars, and I swear to God, I remember my memory shooting back to that thing I told you when you were 8 years old that you were going to one day shred us. And I'm drunk sitting there next to this old school boombox in the fucking valley in the woods, all hammered. And I have my hands in my pockets, my shoulders slumped, listening to this going, it happened. Well, he's shredding us all.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I was always inspired by the music that you guys made with Soul Asunder, and even with Driven. Hearing Driven was like that was your project with my brother and a bunch of other friends that we have, and it was like super inspiring to me because it was friends of mine that actually made an album. I'd say that's one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard, was just knowing that people I knew made something that sounded cool like that. So that moving into awesome. Soul Asunder and having that as a huge musical influence, and then being able to join was awesome too. So I appreciate
that. Is awesome, man. Hey, dude, that's really cool. That whole Driven album is a great story for another episode. And Keith, real quick before we move on to continuing about Pillars, I got to mention, Keith, I was called out on something on the last episode by Nate and our friend Jim about Driven. The industrial goth, the industrial goth band that opened for Typo Negative. My first concert was not MNSO4.
It was not. I assure you, it was not.
Tell us who it was, Nate. Who was MNSO4? Because I got the names wrong.
Well, what is MNSO4 is my first concert experience, because it was Driven in San Mateo at a community center. It was the first band I ever saw. My dad took me to San Mateo to see John's band play, and Chaz was one of those people.
Our only gig in Driven, our one and only.
And it was
Brian Kenny was in the band.
It was amazing. I watched you guys play, and you guys shredded it, and then we were all
me and Brian Kenny on stage for the first time in Driven. I was on keyboards.
Yeah, looking at this band set up that had black and red jumpsuits, and there was there was 9 of them, and there was they had a light set up, and they had the sickest gear ever, and we were like, these guys are about to blow the doors off this place, and they took forever setting up, and I didn't hear one goddamn note that entire set. It was static at the highest volume with incoherent screaming. The singer wore contact lenses. It was dreadful.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
The best gear ever. And I remember that the singer had this weird bump in his forehead and his chin that came out. Brian Kenny was like, that guy looks like a crescent moon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but Brian Kenny told me that story as well.
So
he had braids too. He was like a redhead with braids. I can picture this guy right now. I hope he's listening.
Dude, yeah, they had the world's best gear and they sounded like shit. So we went up there with my Casio keyboard, everybody else's crap, and rocked it. It was also funny as hell, Nate, seeing your dad get caught up in the mosh pit and kind of putting his hands up like, whoa, hey, trying to get out of it.
Also,
and I looked at you, and you were in the red in the face, laughing at seeing that.
there was that, and then there was also you guys used to open up the set with Terminator noises, or like it was a
I had to. It was like doors closing, and I made a chord out of it. It was like jun 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 jun, but I fucked up, and it was just on organs. So the first note was
yeah,
just nonsense.
yeah. It was a great show. Great show.
Okay,
though.
so to correct, and you know what's funny? I actually remember now the name of the goth industrial band that did open for Typo Negative, and this just proves how generic industrial band names are, because it was not MNSO4, it was Uranium 235.
Oh, that was the name.
That was the name of whoever they are. So anyway, I had to reflect on that memory.
You know,
But yeah, that was my first concert experience.
you know,
What
uranium 235 is what they it's either what they use for nuclear power plants or for atomic bombs. I forget which one. That's Keith's corner.
you beat me to it. You beat me to it, man. I was hoping the silence was good. All right. Well, no, that very interesting. All right, look, let's move on. Let's try to keep an eye on the time. So, okay, Pillars of Perversion. Nate, that is when your first band member came into the picture of Ontogeny, which was, and let me just say this before we continue, real quickly. I want you both to say today, right now, you do acknowledge that I, Chaz McConnell, have brought all of this metal together in a strange way. If it was not for me, many of these people in this circle would never have met or had played music together up until now.
That is true.
I am almost like the metal godfather.
That is true, actually.
I want you guys to start calling me godfather.
Well,
I'm not going to do
that.
All right, no. All right, so we'll get back to that as we go. So look, Micah Maniac from Soul Asunder became your singer on Pillars of Perversion, which he sounds amazing, man. I went back and listened to that album. And the production, for your age and for it being your first album and your first time recording, it's still fun to listen to, and it's impressive. It's like, dude, it's clearer than some Cannibal Corpse album. But anyway, talk about recruiting Micah. Sorry?
It was my crate Excalibur.
Yeah.
Yeah. So recruiting Micah, I was a prepubescent little boy who couldn't scream like a man. So I needed somebody who had a man voice. So Micah had a man voice. So I hit him up, and I pretty much wrote the lyrics right before he recorded them, and he'd get them, hear me do them, and then record them, and they worked. So I like them a lot. They're fun.
Dude, they're great. He's got the lows, champion lows that come with those blood curdling highs. It really works for that album. It's perfect. But the other thing I do like about Ontogeny is not many bands do this. Maybe they don't. It's not, it's too daring for them, or they just aren't interested. But to change your style every album is something I always admired, and you don't hear often. The only band I can really think of is Led Zeppelin that made a point to do it. And we kind of wanted to try to do that in Soul Asunder. And I feel like Ontogeny did it too, because each album is very different from the last. But to even complement that further, Ontogeny has a different singer on each album, which almost seems like a tradition to where I expect it and kind of wanted it. Even though I was a singer on one album, I wanted to go back, but I'm like, I'd rather keep the continuity going. I like that about Ontogeny's character. So the second album, first of all, how long in between Pillars before you made your second album?
It was like 4 years, wasn't it, Nate?
Yeah, it was like 4 years. The songs were written earlier, though. I pretty much had some frameworks done as Pillars was being recorded, but the album kind of shape shifted into something new, because that's also Pillars of Perversion was recorded with programmed drums, and the second album was with Keith, and a lot of it was hearing the song differently, knowing that Keith's going to play drums for it, and it kind of changed the sound a lot and made something cool, which is put us on a different path now.
Right.
Jam on
And
it.
that album, sorry, yeah, that album was called Discord and Disillusion, which had our friend Sam on bass. All three of us, Keith on drums, you know, of course, Nate writing all the songs and on guitar, and me on vocals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll say right now, that was the hardest thing musically I have ever done, because I put everything into it. I put my whole musical drive into the lyrics. It was my first time attempting doing like technical death metal vocals, even though like my throat wasn't that. You kind of allowed me to go mid-range, which is my thing. Some lows, but yeah, it was the hardest thing ever, but also the most rewarding in the end, for sure. Because I can still go back and listen to that album and go, man, that shit wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's really not easy. I have to do it now. It's not easy.
So, well, talk a little bit about the difference, that the different influences that came in to Ontogeny since Pillars, because there's definitely a change up in styles from Pillars to Discord and Disillusion.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of it, really. I think Pillars of Perversion, I kind of wrote before I started playing with my other band, Anomalous, and so there was the introduction of our friend Max to playing guitar, and he taught me a lot about guitar and different ways to think about stuff, and kind of showed me some amazing music, Alan Holdsworth stuff, and just really cool music that inspired me to kind of go on a different path. But I think the Mars Volta was a huge influence on that album. They still inspire me. They're a super unique band. They had so much character and a really chaotic style and melody with it. But yeah, the influences kept going, and me wanting to get better at guitar kept going, so it just worked out that way.
Yeah, it really, Keith's playing complemented you, that whole spectrum too, because I feel like everything you just explained coming from Pillars, prog, for lack of a better word, obviously prog is where that got dropped into the mix. Oh, this is another funny little situation. All I remember, when this was years back when Soul Asunder was still going, Nate, I don't know if we've made this clear, but Nate was the bass player in Soul Asunder and Micah was the singer, whereas Nate's his own original project on guitar was Ontogeny. He recruited Soul Asunder singer Micah for Pillars of Perversion to record. Well, I didn't know, but some time passed, and I remember going to Soul Asunder practice because we would have to drive to the city from Monterey. I'm riding in the truck with Micah, and Micah just drops it in conversation. He's like, "Oh yeah, me and Keith and Sam are going to do Ontogeny," and I was like, "What?" Because I had no idea. Basically, Nate had recruited everyone from Soul Asunder, and no one told me, as if I would have said something. But you know what? Back then, I may have been a dick that would have been like, "What the fuck?" For some odd, I don't know, maybe not. But I do remember having a feeling like, this motherfucker is taking my band and making a band.
It worked
But I didn't
on
say
him.
anything.
I guess I was technically being taken from a band too at that point because I was in Anomalous first, right? And then I helped with Thunder. So
And
So I
can you
feel
please,
like-
I forgot that you were in Anomalous before Ontogeny. That's crazy.
and can we please, acknowledge who introduced you to, who told you, Nate, hey, Nate, you should jam with this guy, Max? And who is it that said, hey, Max, you should meet this kid, Nate? I want to hear it.
I want to hear it, you said.
that would be you, Chaz. Thank
The
you.
metal
There we go.
godfather.
I just want everyone who's listening to know that Chaz is the best.
Keith, you got to put your mouth next to the mic a little. A little muffled, but we heard
My
you.
mouth is on the phone.
All right, we got you then. We heard you. Just kidding. But I just thought that was funny that Discord and Disillusion suddenly had my band. But ironically enough, a little time passed, and Micah was busy. He was busy with the Faceless, right?
He joined the Faceless for a minute, yeah.
I think at that time he was just busy. I don't know what the deal was, but he joined Origin. There was that. There was it just worked out to where he wasn't around to do the album. So
Right. And well, I remember you saying to me, you were like, because we were just chatting about your progress, and you were just expressing how much you hate writing lyrics, and I feel that. But it's rewarding, definitely rewarding. But you were expressing how much you hated it, and I don't know if you asked if I would help or if I invited myself to help. I can't remember exactly, but I was certainly eager to do it because I didn't have anything musical going on at the time, and it was a lot of fun.
Hey, Chaz, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I asked you to do it, so I want my credit. So I asked you to do it.
All right, you can take that credit because Micah was pissed.
Oh, he was? I didn't know that.
You can take the blame rather than credit.
I didn't know.
Well,
Mike
I mean,
Well, there was a reason.
yeah,
I kind of
don't know.
This
I
is
don't
what
know if
happened.
Mike was directly pissed at that.
No, he wasn't pissed at that. This is what happened. I wrote the vocals intending to just send them for Micah to do it. And in fact, I came in because I had just moved back from South Carolina. I was like, hey, man, I'll just come and lay down scratch vocals for Micah to listen to and record.
Yeah.
Somewhere
And
down the line, and he did. That's the thing. Micah took time out of his schedule. He went into the studio and he worked his ass off. And it sounded good. The album was honestly releasable, I think, with Micah's vocals, the original vocalist.
Well,
I
he
had
didn't do all the songs though. He only was able to do 3 songs because that's all that were written at the time. And,
Okay.
and then he went on tour, so it was
Right.
it was
Well, it was that, and then I'm going to go ahead and put some of it on me. I will say I wasn't. This is not a completely selfless act. Because I came back into town, everything changed. Like I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I am here. I have nothing musical going on. Micah just so happens to not be available. Not that he wouldn't do it. I know that, fucking Nate and Keith, the guys have been sitting on this music forever. They're tired of shelving it. They want to get it out. And you know what? Selfishly speaking, I wrote this stuff. I would like the opportunity and the chance to field the actual performance myself, live and on the record. Everyone seemed to just go, okay, yeah. And it was really Nate's call. And Nate just made the call. And I remember, I think we didn't tell Micah, that was probably shitty, and just posted it online. And I think Micah posted on Facebook a comment just like, And he had every right to be honest. Like, great. So all of my fucking work just got recorded over and replayed, something like that. And you know what? All I could think of when I read that comment.
I did tell Micah, so I mean.
Oh, and he still commented that?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Micah's the man. I saw Micah recently. He's the shit, and
he had every right to be upset, I have to say, but I'm just admitting a little bit of my own clinging on to some kind of musical career. And I did feel shitty that he put in the work, but it was also circumstantial, so it wasn't that big a deal. I don't know. He was still on the album.
I mean, I don't think you can ever fault somebody for, wanting to release music that they've had for years, and the option to delay the album for that amount of time just, didn't work out. I mean, to me, music is just, it's something I do. I'm not making a career out of it or anything. So I'm making it, and I'm going to release stuff when I want to release it in the end. So
that's real talk. That's real talk, and that's admirable. But let me just feel shitty because I not only took Micah's gig, I took two guys. I felt kind of shitty that year because I actually took Tim's gig too, because he started practicing with you guys. Do you guys remember that rehearsal where he was kind of late showing up to rehearsal? And I was just visiting. So like, well, why don't you just jump on real quick? I'll never forget. It was like being caught cheating or something. He walked in and saw us jamming through the studio glass in your house. And we all kind of looked up like, wow, like we were all gay butt sex together.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, though, with that too, Tim never wanted to join our band at first, and he said, "I'll be a temp singer." So,
right, and that's kind of what he said when he saw us jamming, and I was actually, I was doing my own vocals, so of course it was solid. He just went. He said it, so we didn't have to. I think he told you, Nate, like, you should just have Chaz sing.
Yeah, I had every intention of that too. So I mean,
right. Well, it's okay because I was able to give his gig back, and he ended up being the singer on the next album, the third album, which was. Go ahead and talk about that album a little bit because I love that the style changed again.
Yeah, the Hymns of Ahriman was our third album, and it again was kind of written at the same time Discorded and Disillusion was being recorded, because I just kept writing music as I was recording that album. So it kind of just came naturally from that album to move to something different. And every album I just try to get better at guitar by writing riffs that make me have to get better at guitar. So that's kind of another example of that for me. And it was, again, with Keith on drums and Sam on bass for a few songs anyway. And yeah, it's definitely more atmospheric, I think, and it's darker than Discord and Disillusion, I think, and more polished sounding.
Yeah, also I'd like to add that that was an interesting recording session because I ended up using the electric kit. Remember, Nate? I used the electric kit to record drums for that album.
Yeah.
So we went from like more of a raw sound like a raw sort of a live sound for Discord, and then we had this really polished, very clean, crisp sound for Hymns of Ahriman. It came out really good though, because that's when Nate also started using the 8-string guitar. So there's some cool, heavy, low tuning Meshuggah stuff on that album that you didn't really get on the second album. So yeah, that's just another thing interesting about that album, pretty much.
Yeah.
I remember first hearing it and just really in awe of how solidified all the ideas from Ontogony's past came into the picture. It's like you came out with Pillars, came out screaming, and then when Discord came out, it got all proggy, and all of these new fluid ideas came into it. And you also, I think, really started to etch your own signature. That's the other thing I love about Ontogony, I always have, is in all the albums, you can pigeonhole genres here and there where you might want to feel like you have to, but no matter what, there's always a riff that'll show up that's got personality. And that, I always, the way I say it is, this riff is talking. The guitar, you're making the guitar say something because it's like a sentence. It's not just, metal sounding riffs going on. It's fucking personality. And so there's a character to it. Ontogony sounds like it's a body of work. There's fucking legs, balls, and a head and everything. You just got this personality there.
Right
And
on,
that really
like
came
how
through on that.
I like how you instead of saying legs and then the next logical thing would be arms, but you went to balls.
Well, yeah. Or heart.
Legs, balls, and head. No arms, but plenty of balls.
You got that fucking. I really have no answer to that. Thanks for pointing that out, Keith. No.
That'd be a rough existence. Just
I
legs, balls in the head.
Yeah, it would
That
not be
would be
proper.
rough.
That would
You
not be
couldn't
proper ontogeny, scientifically.
You couldn't
speaking.
hold a frying pan or anything.
Nope. It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
So this is the sound of us moving on. And that would move on to the most recent album that basically just came out, Anti-Social Media. Talk about that for a minute.
I guess the biggest thing that was different about it was I became the singer on it, so I wrote all the lyrics for the album myself. And again, it's just every album I just play guitar and kind of write what sounds cool to me, and try to grow in my songwriting and have themes that develop into different riffs, either in the same song or in other songs. Like a lot of albums have themes that are album themes that you can hear throughout, and I kind of continued that idea. And there's acoustic guitars, which I never really did on the other albums. I had clean parts, but never acoustic guitars. And yeah, it was again just continuing getting better personally in my own head on songwriting and guitar playing, pretty much. Yeah.
I can let me kind of respond to that, because I think I can hear that your sensibility musically was also getting a little more confident, because I feel like other musical influences, you started having the courage, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's not like it's courage, whatever, but you started you dared to be different and bringing in a couple other musical influences from the previous albums. Like, what would you say? I don't want to tell you what your influences are, but I can tell you what I think I hear. But what would you say are the new kind of influences that you wanted to bring into the Entourage style on Anti-Social Media?
I mean, I guess there's a lot of jazz influences that came around. I listened to a piano player named Tigran Hamasyan that Keith showed me, who's amazing. Keith, you need to take your credit. You showed me Tigran Hamasyan. And yeah, I love that stuff. And it has I don't know. What do you think it's influenced by? What's the...
I hear... Go ahead, Keith. Go ahead.
I'd like to say that the fourth Ontogeny album, it's interesting because to me, when I listen to it, it seems like it has the most like rock influences rather than just death metal. It's the most. It's the one album that has the most more heavy rock moments than any other Ontogeny album. All the other Ontogeny albums is progressive death metal, technical, and the fourth one is as well. But there's also moments where it's it chills, and it's just some of the riffs that Nick came up with are very I don't know, just more rock, which I think was kind of interesting. It's different, you know. That's kind of what at least what I hear. That's
what I was going to go with too. There's, some you can't pinpoint. I can hear some Tool undertow. I'm probably thinking of maybe one moment just because how the bass sounds, but still the fact that it really came to me instantly. I felt some old school Tool. I felt a little Pantera-y, Stank. It's the most melodic album that Ontogeny has come out with, which is why when you first started playing me the demos, I was like, oh, please let me sing on this. I begged, kind of half kidding, but I think you already had an idea and you were probably right. And in the end, it was the better idea because it was great to hear you stepping forward to the mic, which now I think you could never go back unless you got some known singer to guest on it or something. I don't know, just for fun. But
yeah, I think I'm gonna be the singer for the recordings and live now, and it's again just it's another ease of use thing too. I've always had ideas of where vocals should go. I just hate writing them, but I actually enjoyed writing the vocals on this album a lot. It was kind of fun for me and funny.
I wanted to talk about that. I'm sorry to cut you off. The lyrics, that was another bullet point I had because that's another major evolution in Ontogeny is the lyrical. Because, you were not really in charge. You did write all the lyrics for Pillars. You've written lyrics for Solo Sunder, so I definitely know you've got a great lyrical sensibility. You get it. Discord, I had probably half of the album that I wrote, and you wrote the other half. And I think we had a concept going about Fallen Angels, and we just sort of ran with it, so we didn't have to think very long. And, so it's, I can admit that. It was really let's just make this sound good and put a little bit of ourselves into the lyrics, like always what happens. But really, it was a concept album, which is kind of the easy way out. I'll just say that. And then Hymns was all Tim, and he's very lyrical minded. He's his mind is a thesaurus. Really, really brilliant guy. And then Anti-Social Media comes out, and I'm reading these lyrics, and I can say this, dude, you inspired me, and I think it's inspired. It has definitely inspired some lyrics on my last album I did with Keith, and I think it will inspire lyrics in the future because you dared to have a common dialogue in the middle of a technical death metal album, which is really, it's new. I don't hear it a lot because I hear like the new Velemea demo was released. I pushed play. I liked what I heard. I always liked those guys. But the lyrics, like always, it's just dark thing,
Yeah.
bad feels. And, you know, like, okay, guys, try, you know. Or you have the other end where it's like surgical or medical jargon or whatever, or Cosmos, all fun stuff. Talk a little bit about what your lyrics are about in anti-social media.
Well, it varies in a lot of ways. In some ways it's about people just being disappointed with their life enough to turn to social media for some type of happiness, and they realize they can create this own identity for themselves and become happy, even though their life is filled with just mundane going to work and general unhappiness, being bored, not being able to think of ideas or anything. I don't know. It was kind of, in some ways it was a theme of that. In some ways it was me writing just what the riffs made me feel, and just kind of mixing funny ideas, because life is just filled with darkness and it's filled with happiness, it's filled with funny stuff, and there's ways to make something aggressive and dark and still be able to poke fun at yourself and realize that I'm an adult person screaming into a microphone right now. You know, what's the reason I'm doing that? Like, so, you know, sometimes I'd be driving to work and stuck in traffic and be like, this shit makes me want to fucking lose my mind and
Yeah.
crash right now. I hate this shit.
Dude,
So there's that. Then there's the realization that if that's all that I'm complaining about, is this really worth all this yelling? You know, it's you know, it's just kind of a fun way to look at it.
That's kind of what I feel at it when I'm reading lyrics and hearing the songs. It's almost, you know, when you start laughing out of hysteria, you scream and then laugh again. Just, you know, it captures that in an album.
Yeah, it was the intention, and I'm very happy with the way it came out, and they're fun to do live as well. There's themes like we had in our friend group, where whenever something was like a really heavy riff and there was a scream coming on, the lyrics in our head would always be I fucking hate my life, and I wanted to incorporate that on the album, so I got to finally sing I fucking hate my life on an album, even though I don't really hate my life. But I mean, it was kind of a group fun thing that we have, and it was having fun with ideas that can be construed as being funny or dark at the same time.
Right. It's like, comedy's not the right word, but it's more irony.
Like a dark comedy.
Right. And also the beautiful contrast of like, hey guys, let's not take ourselves so seriously, while at the same time, when you're listening to the instrumentation, you know, everyone means business, and this is absolutely serious. And it's beautiful contrast, and it's kind of perfect for now, like the era we're in. So hats off to you for that. And I can't believe I just said hats off to you. I never say that.
I don't wear hats.
All right. All right. So look, everyone, please go check out those albums that exist. We're going to have links to all the albums on this page. Nate, tell us about Ontogony's future. What are you working on musically right now for the next Ontog?
Again, I'm kind of doing it a little different, I guess, in my approach to writing. I'm writing a new album without recording ideas as I write it. I'm pretty much just letting what sticks in my head and what is memorable be the riffs this time. It's making it so what I think are my fluff riffs aren't really there, because the things that I remember day to day are worth remembering. Obviously, if I can recall them without the recording device, I feel like they were more important. And that's how I wrote when I was 10 years old and 14 years old, before I had all the digital stuff. So I kind of wanted to go back to that idea and just play guitar
man.
and have fun playing guitar.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but isn't that kind of where the best songs come from? Just jamming in your practice space, where you could never have done this in a linear editing way. It had to have just been a jam thing.
Exactly. And the things that you stick in, like they stick in your head, are just they're worth it for something
Right,
made you
like you said, you didn't need a recording device. It's the kind of riff that makes you go, oh yeah, man, and fucking makes your dick hard, and there's no way you could forget it because you like playing it.
Yeah, it's all about getting your dick hard. Fuck yeah.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
That's
What's up, Gabe?
it's really what it's all about in the end.
Getting your dick
Hard
hard?
dicks.
Yeah.
In the end,
The meaning of life.
In the end, there's nothing but fluids and hard dicks.
so all right, is this going to be a full length Ontogeny, your next album?
I haven't yet decided. Probably we've been discussing doing like an EP, but I don't know what will come out. Sometimes a writing session can go really well, and I can write a few songs, and if they kind of have a cohesive idea to a theme of the album, I'll release it that way. I don't really know until it comes out.
Excellent.
I for one am excited because I've heard some of Nate's. We've jammed on a couple of his new riffs, and they're super wild. They're pretty wild. They're definitely a little bit more. I would say that your new riffs are a little bit more on like the, almost going back to like the Discord and Disillusion era, where they're just a little bit wilder, which I like.
Yeah, and I think that comes from how it was written. Discord and Disillusion wasn't highly edited in the guitar playing album. I recorded all those parts and did it in long takes to make sure it had that feel, and there's a looseness to my style that I want to actually keep going to.
Sure.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, that's that Ontog character. That's what I mean. It's really, you can't really mimic it, which is rare today. Okay, excellent. Real quick, let's talk about the new music videos, because they've been stunning. Which is your new recruit Kenji, which again, the metal godfather. Yours truly, Chaz McConnell, who these guys will call Godfather by the end of the episode. They're gonna.
Okay, guys.
I'm not gonna. but
Kenji, amazing musician who, at the time, happened to I was grateful to have him recruit me to do some vocals on his project, Kildo, and I think I showed you the demo that we were working on, Nate, and you were like impressed. Keith heard it, and I think he just said, "Congratulations, your new band." And Nate, you were like, "This is awesome. Tell Kenji to join Ontog," because you needed a bass player. Because Sam left again, someone who I introduced to Nate, and so I said, "All right," and I said, "Hey, Kenji, you should join Ontogeny," and you know what? He did.
I'll be a son of a bitch. Hats off to you, Chaz.
All right, we're gonna stop the hats off. I'm sorry I said it.
My hat was off a long time ago.
I'm putting my hat back on.
All right, but anyway, the videos. Gotta give a shout out to Kenji. Amazing bass player. Amazing videographer.
Did a great job with the videos. My friend Casey did our video before on the Hymns of Ahriman album. We released a video for the song Narcotize, and it kind of started off the comedy theme of our music videos. And then once Kenji joined and he said that he does videos himself as well, it kind of became easy to talk about doing videos together and really making it something that we didn't have to rush and kind of get our idea out for the theme of the album. And he did the video for Living Witness, which is the first song on anti-social media, and it kind of outlines the theme of the entire album to come, with everything that we talked about before, the comedy and the daily stuff and the social media aspect of it. So,
and it's hilarious while you're listening to it. It's hard to laugh because then the riffs come in and moments come in where you're like, this is sick, and then the shit makes you laugh. So it's very stimulating. And
yeah, that was the goal with that, to show the overstimulation and kind of have it make it like a stream of consciousness thing, like a thought process of a person almost, as the video is going.
fuck yeah, man. Totally. And always fun to make videos. But that guy, Kenji, being a band member and coming through, it's honestly, and I'm not just saying this because I know you guys, it's the best metal videos I've seen in a long time. And I've seen a lot of people say the same thing. It's just refreshing, just like the lyrics, to be real while at the same time being your badassness. And very good stuff, Kenji.
I'd like to add, by the way, that when I about a year ago, I took a vacation to Japan. I went to a heavy metal bar, and I got the bartender to play that music video, Living Witness, on the big screen in that bar.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the reaction?
There wasn't a lot of people in there, to be honest. But it was cool. It was just cool seeing it. And then the bartender I was like, this is my band. He was super impressed. So that was fun.
That's awesome. I remember Keith sending me a little video on Facebook while he was on vacation there. And he messaged, I'm in a karaoke bar in Japan. They're the nicest people in the world, and they can't speak one word of English. And I played a video, and it's some girl going, a whole new world. Karaoke.
That's right. Yeah, they were singing that fucking Aladdin or whatever.
Just love it. All right. Good stuff, dude. Ontogeny for the win. Everyone, please listen to these guys. If you like prog, death, tech metal, I'm starting to slur. I'm getting a little drunk. Can we talk about Anomalous for a minute?
Yeah, Anomalous is it was the first band I ever joined, really, other than Ontogeny being with my brother. It was our friend Max Seaman on guitar and Tim Hale on vocals, and when I first joined, he was on guitar, and I joined as a bass player. We recorded our first album, Cognitive Dissonance, our EP album, and released it on Brutal Bands Records. And then we set off writing our second album, Omnivalent, and it was a self-recorded album again at my studio. And it has Marco Pietrozella on drums, and we spent 5 years.
Nate refuses to call him Lord Marco, just like he refuses to call me Metal Godfather. We still like him.
No, it's okay. He's his lordship. His lordship, Marco. Marco's the man.
I'm sorry, dude. Go ahead.
He's a funny ass dude and a fucking great drummer.
He is a great guy.
Super positive, just all the time, and
yeah,
he was great to be around. I'm down.
I don't know him well, but he is super encouraging and supportive of all things music, especially with all his people he knows. But so yeah, talk about that album recording experience. Was it fun? Doesn't sound fun.
It was fun. It was fun at times for sure. It was a lot of times it was very stressful and a lot of hard work. And it was 5 years writing and recording that. We would write whole sections of songs only to throw them out and rework them the next day. And it was very just. It was three cooks in the kitchen trying to get their ideas out and just changing things constantly and reworking stuff constantly and yeah, it was dealing with schedules a lot. It was a very stressful album to do. I'm very happy that it came out the way it did and that it got
very
made at
rewarding,
all.
I'm sure. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is called by a lot of people like the greatest technical death metal album ever made, and honestly, it is.
I enjoyed making it. There's a million riffs on it, so you can listen to it over and over again and take different riffs each time and different feels and stuff. And yeah,
Keith,
Max is my favorite player.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that album has one of my favorite metal songs of all time. The title track, Omnivalent. It's like the coolest song I've ever heard. Probably up until this day.
And Keith was recruited to do drums in replace of Marco on the instrumental, which Marco was all about. That's the cool thing about him, like totally supportive. And he could hear that Keith's fluidity worked better for the style. What was the name of that song?
Nate, I forget. It's been a while.
Mitosis?
Yeah, I'm terrible.
Mitosis?
Yeah, Mitosis. There's Merged on
the
first album.
I remember.
I should know.
No, but again, it really Keith's drumming complemented it. It is, I think, still the greatest technical death metal album. It's worth checking out. Like you said, I think all three of us can agree Max probably is the greatest guitarist we know.
Oh, he's the best guitarist I know.
I think he's the best guitarist I ever met, and I've met a lot of guitarists in the jazz world too. This guy takes the cake.
Yeah, Max
I don't get it, but he's the best I know.
Yeah, he has the thing. Go ahead, Keith. Sorry.
He's just got this magic, man. You watch him play, watch him improvise, and it's not just like how he's running up and down the fretboard. It's like his ideas are just fun to listen to. I don't know. He's got the right stuff.
He has what players like Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page have. Not technically, because Max blows them out of the water. But I'll even mention Sean Lane, because those guys have the ability of being able to do anything they want on the fretboard, and that is a whole black. And to have that kind of freedom, Max has got it.
True.
All right. Well, dude, excellent. I'm really gonna again say we're gonna wrap this episode up in a minute with just a couple reviews and recommendations, which we always end on. We're gonna start with. But before we move on, let me just say again, Ontogeny and Anomalous. You guys check them out. They're on Facebook. We're gonna have links. There's new music videos, new music all the time. You might be able to win a chance to meet the band. What do we used to say? Win a chance to meet the band, and then you hang out with the band, and it end up being like, "Hey, man, you got 5 on a stack."
Yeah, right.
They have to treat us to lunch.
So yeah, definitely check these guys out. But let's jump to our what? Go ahead, Keith.
Win a chance to bring us to In-N-Out and buy us lunch if we're broke.
Bring Keith In-N-Out. It's for noble cause. All right. Moving to reviews and recommendations. And first, we're going to start with the listener, Mauricio, our old friend, who was cool enough to interact with the first episode and do a Tool album review. And he also recommended us something. Then we're going to jump to Nate's recommendation and close out the episode. So real quick, and Nate, you can join in on this for the review. But let's start with Mauricio's review of the new Tool album. I'm going to read it here. Hold on a second. I'm fucking blowing it here. Hold on. I got fucking that. All right. Just heard the new Tool album, and it was definitely a little hard to believe that it took 13 years to create this. Not exactly a letdown, but definitely I think that the two that really stood out to me was Tempest and Numa. This is a common review. They definitely had more of an impact with regards to the other songs, definitely being more or less their familiar Toolish flair that they drive so well. But still a little hard to swallow that 13-year wait. I understand. Perhaps their most creative pinnacle was during the Enema through Ladderless phase. Perhaps the fact that Maynard wasn't necessarily with them at all times, maybe this in fact affected the band and their writing approach. And perhaps in the same way that I remember Pantera when working very similarly with Phil Anselmo on Phil Anselmo, the rest of the band working in another. The chemistry does matter when creating this type of art. I mean, like working together on ideas as a band collectively. It has a different approach, but I definitely believe that this album will grow on me. And I think that they had moments where it did bring me back to their influences, such as King Crimson.
Okay.
But I think that overall it will grow on me. But it depends again on the eye of the beholder, or in this case, ear, mind. But the album didn't have a negative impact. Still, two songs in particular that gave me goosebumps, which is rare nowadays, are Numa and Tempest. Very fair review, and honestly, I kind of agree with all of that. Nate, what did you think of the new Tool album, real fast?
It was Tool. It sounded like Tool, and I guess you can't fault a band for sounding like themselves. But I wasn't too big a fan of it. I liked Numa and Tempest, but overall, I think it could have been a better album, especially after the long wait. But I think some of that letdown for me could have been the long wait as well. I mean, I feel like if that album was released closer to 10,000 Days, it probably would have been a better album to me. But there's some riffs on there that just sound like the other albums and sound too close to riffs on the other albums to where I feel like I've heard it all before. But it's Tool, and Maynard is the man still. I wish he screamed on the album. There's kind of no intense Maynard moments. It's all kind of soft singing, but his phrasing is cool as always. It's Maynard. The production's pretty fat. It sounds like Danny Carey wrote the album to me with the bass player. It just sounds like he's soloing the whole time with a bass player. You know, it was a good album though. I can't say it's a bad album because it's executed well. There's really cool ideas all over it. It just sounds like something I've heard before.
Fair, dude. Very fair. That's me and Keith really had a lot of the same points as a lot of people do. Also, I mean, we also decided we can't name another band that's ever made us wait 13 years for an album.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I can't think of. Nate, when was the last Necrophagist album out? And do you think he'll ever release another one?
I don't know when the last one was. It's not going to happen though.
No, he's not. He's expressed that years ago. He's not.
Oh well, then yeah, I can't think of another band that's made us wait 13 years.
Right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's continue on to Mauricio's recommendation, and we all can chime in on that. So back to Mauricio's comment. Some really good points have been made, guys. I really appreciate your points. Very astute and definitely thought-provoking in terms of the layout of music and what have you. I agree completely that things are changing in terms of how people are getting their music nowadays and how basically they're receiving the experience. I can remember my times back in the day going to Tower Records, purchasing a CD, going back home and really just taking the time to sit down and listen track by track to really get the full experience. He's elaborating on episode 1 where we were talking about the difference between back in the day buying a record and being immersed in this huge world with this giant booklet. And, you know, that whole thing compared to digital and earbuds with no bass, yada, yada. So anyway, continuing on. On an album that I would have to say that really reflects that kind of feeling or ride, I would have to say is Pink Floyd's The Wall. Not to name drop here, but they definitely, from beginning to end, immerse the listener into a flowing story, an intro and outro, very much like a book. Unfortunately, it's set up nowadays to see that kids are receiving that kind of, aren't experiencing that as well. Sorry, guys. But again, what Keith said is true, that a true listener will search and find a way to reach that level and receive that full experience, and I completely agree. Everybody agrees with Keith. Just shit on Chaz. I think the podcast is really fantastic, guys. Awesome. Keep it up. Really great work. I'm looking forward to hearing more stuff. And in terms of an album, I would have to recommend Animals as Leaders. Self-titled album. These guys are pretty much an instrumental band. Definitely, they take the threshold forward in terms of pushing genres. It's really interesting. But anyways, thanks again. Cool podcast, guys. Keep up the good work, and I'll keep the comments coming. Awesome, Mauricio, dude. Thanks for getting involved. Very good review. And we'll talk about Animals as Leaders. All three of us are pretty familiar with them. Fun fact about Animals as Leaders. Keith, our very own Keith here, was almost their drummer. Keith, can you tell that story?
Well, sort of, and I actually have Nate to thank for that, because Nate was talking to Tosin, the lead guitar player, outside of a show back many, many years ago. They were playing at a show in the city. They were talking outside, and I remember, I think Tosin was subbing in for the band Born of Osiris at the time. So they were talking, and I guess he was talking to Nate about how he's starting his own band, and Nate was like, dude, my friend Keith plays drums. He does this and that. You should try him out. And I guess Tosin said, sure. So we ended up filming 2 covers of some of this material and then sent it to Tosin. And I was in contact with him for a short period of time. And it ended up being between me and Naveen Copperwise, which is the old drummer from Animosity, also from San Francisco. And I think Tosin ended up going with Naveen because I think they had toured together before, and he just knew him a little bit better, which I totally understand. But, yeah, so there was a period where I was,
Well, I thought he offered you a tour with Between the Buried and Me.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember that.
Oh, well, that's what I remember. You said, he said, hey, can you go on tour with Between the Buried and Me? And you said no. I guess I got it wrong. Nate, are you still there?
Yeah.
All right. Do you remember that?
Well, the key thing? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do remember that. I don't remember Keith ever getting offered the tour, but I do remember Keith doing tryout videos. And
which I might have gotten wrong. That still exists too. You can see that Keith audition video for Animals as Leaders, and yeah, man, you almost got the gig. That would have been awesome. But let's go ahead and get into our reviews of that first album. Who wants to start? Go ahead, Nate.
That's my favorite Animals as Leaders album. I think it has the best songs on it. It's some of my favorite riffs ever are on that album. That it's such a fantastic album. From start to finish, there's stuff to take from it. There's really cool rhythms, cool electronic stuff, great ideas, really chunky stuff, and it's, as Mauricio said, it's very forward thinking and pushing boundaries of genres, and it was just something different styles of playing. The double thumping stuff was really cool to hear, just somebody's approach to guitar just being so different. I was really excited when I heard that album, for sure.
Fuck yeah. Keith, what do you think?
I remember when that album came out, it made a big splash in the like progressive and metal scene. Everyone was like talking about it because it was super original. It was this guy put out this album, and he was playing guitar in a way that not a lot of people at the time were playing. It was very interesting, finger techniques and stuff. And of course, it's a very jazzy album as well as heavy metal and progressive rock and fusion and electronic. So it was a blend of all these styles, and it was just very, very fresh at the time. It was something that was very, very fresh in the scene. It wasn't your run-of-the-mill metal. It was very interesting and colorful. I also love the album. It had a big impact on me as well. I think my favorite song on the album is the second song, and I forget what the name of it is, but it also has some beautiful emotional moments too, like really beautiful movements, melodic movements that I really, really enjoyed. I also really enjoyed the acoustic track on that album, one of my favorites. And yeah, it's a great album. It's also really great because what's interesting about that album is that, like the first Ontogeny album, Tosin actually used an electric. He programmed the drums. It was all programmed drums. And
By
it's really
Misha.
cool to see. Yes, yeah, Misha from.
Misha was never appropriately credited on that, which I found out, which he was kind of bummed because he helped break him out into the scene. But he not only did the programming, the synth, this part. He's what brought the gent at the post body.
Oh, we're losing you, Chaz. Can you say that again?
Look,
Hello? Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're a little muffled. Maybe it's just my end.
I'm here. You are sounding disconnected, Jess.
Am I still?
No,
No.
you're better now.
All right. I'll just say Misha was not really credited. He co-wrote the album and did the drumming stuff. He really brought the gent into Tosin's vibe.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people know that Misha produced that album
Sure.
in the end. But yeah, what's interesting is I really like hearing what their current drummer does with those programmed recordings.
Oh yeah, dude, the current drummer is out of this fucking world, dude. Some of the best drumming I've ever heard in metal.
He's one of the best in the scene for sure. He might be the best.
All right, so I'll hammer out my quick review on Animals as Leaders. I can say this full confidence. When I first heard that first album, when it was released years ago, 2009?
I think so.
It is the album that brought me back into metal because I stopped listening to metal for a while. I went on to my old roots, other stuff, always appreciated it, but never listened to it. That shit made me appreciate metal again. And I still go back and play some Animals as Leaders every now and then, and like, dude, this is, God, it must be what the golf world felt like when Tiger Woods took it over. But no, excellent fucking music, man. I strongly recommend anyone who has not heard Animals as Leaders yet, strongly recommend this shit. It's instrumental, so if you don't care for screaming, you don't got to worry about that. But the power and the energy is there like any other metal band. Rhythmic, melodic, jazzy. This guy fucking creates a world that we haven't heard before.
It's
A
very
whole
unique.
new world, if you will.
A whole new world. That's funny. Brother,
All right. All right,
Don't
and
you dare
finally,
close your eyes.
and finally, I gotta say, Nate, this was great, dude. I hope you join us on future episodes. Thanks for telling us all about Ontogeny. You can join us to shoot the shit in future episodes. Before we sign off, we do have one more album review. This came from Nate, who wanted to talk about it. And what album was that, Nate?
It's The Bedlam in Goliath by the Mars Volta.
Take me with
I'm going to go ahead and start this one. So I checked out this album, and this is what I first thought, because I am familiar with the Mars Volta. Their first album is really the one that I fell in love with. Nothing after that really fucking grabbed me by the musical junk. But this is why I like this podcast. The whole idea was finding new stuff from people, getting new recommendations. So I went and listened to this full album this week via Nate's recommendation. And at first, when I started playing, I was like, okay, this sounds like it's the guitarist and drummer's album. Really, it's like they are the lead. Riffs. Boy, I can't say the word riffs enough on this album, dude. Some of the most golden, beautiful fucking riffs. Dude, really riff master compared to the other album. But the singer, at first, I was like, he's becoming like a character, like Coheed and Cambria. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I loved his natural voice, the power of his natural singing voice, but he made himself into a character vocally, where at first I was not really digging it. You know what I mean?
Are you saying that there's a bit of an affectation that he added to the singing?
Yeah, there's an inflection that it's more of all I can say is character, because I'm not trying to trash him, but it's certainly he's expressing something that's not real. Anyway, as I kept listening, it really grew on me, because there are moments where I was like, dude, never mind. This guy he is my favorite part of the band. Like, this is how I'm really bad at describing stuff sometimes, so I have to revert to fucking metaphors, which is gay. But here it is. Listening to Mars Volta is like having a bad dream. And then the singer is like this lucid dreamer sent to guide me out of it.
Interesting.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's tangible, and he's so goddamn good. The whole album is masterful. It really deserves all. I was blown away.
Repeat that last thing. We lost you.
It convinced me by the end of the album. It's an amazing listen from start to finish.
Sick.
Yeah, I feel like the singer is kind of matching the overall chaos of the album. The drummer's just Thomas Pridgen is like going insane the entire album, and he has this like over the top, really super high vocal on this album that he didn't do on other ones. He always had a high pitch like singing voice, but this one he does like an over the top high pitch singing voice. And when I first heard it, I was like, that is so over the top, but it kind of worked really well with the songs and kind of moving the songs, and everything that he does is so cool and has so much attitude and personality. And there could be no other singer for that band, and those riffs wouldn't be cool without that singer either. I feel like there'd be cool moment, but the songs are moved by him, and just that band is that working together. It's just it was super inspiring. That's the album that kind of blew my musical mind when I was writing Discord and Disillusion and trying to like capture a chaotic feel that has melody and catchiness to it. And yeah, it's a masterpiece album.
Absolutely. Keith, go.
That's it, man. I already said it's a sick album. And wait. Was I thinking of Animals as Leaders?
No. Mars.
God's sakes.
No, hold on.
Who's running this podcast, Grimshaw?
I don't know. I gotta. All I know is I gotta pee hella bad. But let me just say that. The Bedlam and Goliath is it's definitely my second, like, out of the first 4 albums they put out, it's definitely like up there is like it's my first, or it might be my second favorite before Delouse. But yeah, it's a brilliant album. I mean, especially when they got Thomas Pridgen on drums, it breathed new life, a new vibe into their sound. Because for the first 3 albums, they had this guy. What was his name, Nate? The first drummer, what's his name again? John Theodore. And he's a great drummer in his own right.
Theodore Roosevelt was their original drummer.
No, his name is John Theodore. Sorry, but
Let my people go. Oh wait, that was Moses.
He's a great drummer, and I love what he added. But when they got Pridgeon on the Bedlam, he just brought the fire, man. And of course, aside from the crazy drumming and riffage, yeah, the singer just has some of the catchiest melody lines and phrases, and they're just so fun to listen to. I love the vibe of that album. It's got this really bizarre, like almost Middle Eastern vibe to it sometimes. It's just really weird how they put it together, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and Nate, didn't you tell me that you found out from some write-up that the way they record their albums is they'll jam on different sections a few times, and they'll just keep the best organic thing and splice the best ones together for each song?
Yeah, and so the band is basically the singer and the guitar player that have these great musicians play with them, and they jam for hours, and they piece together songs, and the band doesn't even know what the song is going to sound like until it's edited into what it becomes for an album. It's an interesting way to do it. I've never heard anyone do that before.
Fucking spectacular.
Yeah.
This was a great episode. Thanks for joining us, Nate. You fucking rock.
Hell yeah, right on for having me. It was fun, and
Everyone-
you have a listener now.
Fuck yeah, bro. And everyone check out Ontogeny and Anomalous and Mars Volta and Animals as Leaders. And Keith,
And
thanks for joining.
and
Nate,
Max.
thanks. And Max. God damn it. We're going to try to get Max on an episode one of these days. So, hey,
Yeah,
Good luck.
for sure.
thanks everybody for chiming in. Stay tuned for episode 4. Keith, Nate, late.
Later.
Peace.